Good evening.
Okay, so we're dealing with machlokas between, we're on Yud Beis Amud Aleph, 12a, Masechta Pesachim. We're dealing with the machlokas Rav Yehuda and Rav Meir regarding the hours of the day, right? Rav Yehuda held that in the fifth hour, you suspended, you don't burn and you don't eat. And Rav Meir held that already was usher. And we try to compare that machlokas that they have regarding witnesses that come to give testimony and whether we negate their testimony because they were off by a little bit. So also Rav Huna Braid Rav Yehuda Amri L'Shmaitza Kamei de Rava. The sugi was learned in front of Rava. Amar Umay Ilu Daikinan Bani Sadi Dahai de Komer Sholosh. That which we investigate with the witnesses, and that the person who said that the murder happened in the third hour of the day, he meant betchila shalosh, at the beginning of the third hour. V'haydekamar chamesh meant besof chamesh. So that means they might have been off by 3 hours, right? Tchila shalosh means you have the whole third hour, the fourth hour, and the whole fifth hour. And the havi edus mukhashas v'lo katlina. Therefore, it seems that it would be a testimony that's conflicting. We're going to go and kill the person out of the suffix. The Torah says, the basic role of Bezdin is to try to be melamed zchus and not to kill the person. So, El Amar Rava, Divri Rab Meir, Adam Toyesh Shos Chaser Mashu. Rav Meir held that the tolerability, the tolerance, the acceptance is a little less than 2 hour difference. And Rav Yehuda Adam Toyesh Sholish Chaser Mashu, a little less than 3 hours. L'div Rav Meir Adam Toyesh Shos Chaser Mashu, because Ma'isa Kihavi, the actual event might have happened Obet Chila Shtayim. It could have happened at the beginning of the second hour, or besof shalosh, because the Mishnah said one aide can say it happened at 2 o'clock, the other aide said it could happen at 3 o'clock, and we didn't throw out the testimony. We said if they were off an hour, that was okay. But the Gemara is now pointing out that if you say that it's in the second hour, it could have happened at 2:01, and if it happened besof shalosh, that would be 3:59. So that's a little less than 2 hours. Right? That's the way Rav Meir. L'div Rabbi Yehuda, Adam toya shalosh shos chaser mashu. Because Rabbi Yehuda allowed a 2 hour difference. So the Ma'isa Kiyave, it could have been betchila shalosh or besof chamesh. It could have happened at the beginning of the third hour, at the end of the fifth hour, because he gave you a 2 hour leeway. Well, tchila shalosh would mean you'd have the whole third hour, the whole fourth hour, and the whole fifth hour, it's a little less than 3 hours. And that's permitted. Now, Tanan, we learn in the Mishnah, in Sanhedrin, so when witnesses came to testify about a capital crime, so we check them with what are called chakiros. These are the fundamental questions that you must ask. There's no elective. These have to be asked. And they're primarily related to time and place. Because there's a principle. Any testimony that you cannot uproot through the process of hazama, and we'll just define what hazama means, so we don't accept such testimony. So therefore, a fundamental rule was you had to ask these 7 questions, which is basically time and place. Now, why is that? Because Eidim Zomimim is a specific refutation of the initial Eidus. Reuven and Shimon come and they say, we saw Chaim Yankel kill Yosef on Monday in such and such year at 1 p.m. Such and such date. We'll see how detailed we go in the date at 1 p.m. Now, the second pair of Eidim, Levi and Yehuda, come to Bezdin, and they say that Reuven and Shimon are not correct because they were with us in Disneyland on Monday at 1 o'clock. So it's got to be Imanu Hayisem. They were with us at a different place. Then, if that happens, we believe the second group, and whatever the first Eidus, whatever testimony if they were giving testimony about somebody getting Malchus, then you give Malchus to the first group. If they were testifying about somebody where there was a capital crime, you would execute the 2 Eidim. Now, the only way to be Mazim, the first set, is if you have time and place. So the 7 Chakiros have been designed to pinpoint time and place. And that's why you must ask those questions. If you don't ask those questions, the Eidus is rejected. Because Eidus that cannot be thrown out through Hazama process is not acceptable Eidus. So what is the Sheva Chakiros? Be'eza Shavua means in a 50-year period, you're going to have 7 Yovels. So let's say in the 20th year, after the previous Yovel, that would be in the 3rd Yovel, 6th year of that Yovel, right? Because 14 plus 6 is 20. So it'd be in the 3rd Yovel. So you have to know which Yovel period. Be'ez Shana, which year of the Yovel period. Then Be'ez Chodesh, what month of the year. Bekama B'Chodesh, let's say the 3rd day of Tishrei. And Be'eza Yom, what day of the week? Be'ezo Shah, what time? And then Be'eza Makom, and what place it was at. We're going to see there are questions called Drishot, Chakiros and Drishot. Drishot are more details. What color shirt was the murderer wearing? Was he right-handed? Was he left-handed? These questions you don't have to ask, but if you add, the more questions you ask, the more you might trip up the 2 Eidim. And if you can get them to be conflicting, you can get the murderer off. Remember, in the Torah wants v'shaftu ha'eda v'hitzilu ha'eda. They want the Sanhedrin to do whatever it can to make the criminal innocent. That's the intent, or that's the overriding desire. Vitanya, the Brisa says, "Ma ben chakiros lebedikos." What's the difference between a chakira and a bedika? Chakiros, the 7 questions we just discussed, which are chakiros, Omar echad menen yodei dusim b'tema. If one of the 2 Eidim does not know the answer to one of the 7 chakiros, then there's no edus. Both Eidim need to know the answer, and they need to be the same within whatever tolerance we accept. Remember, we said one could say 2 o'clock, one could say 3 o'clock. The other, according to Rab Meir, according to Rab Yudah, it could be 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So with whatever tolerance Chazal accept, they have to be the same. And if they don't know the answer to one of the 7 chakiros, there's no edus. But regarding the bedikos, afilu shteim oimrim einanu yodim. Let's say both of them say we asked them what color shirt was he wearing, and they don't know. That's okay. Edus and kayemes, because that fact has nothing to do with hazama. That fact has nothing to do with where were they. That two other Eidim can say, oh, imanu hayisem. What color the guy's shirt was is irrelevant regarding that. Now, what's the difference between the two? Because chakiros amar echad men any odei dusam b'teila davile edu shiyata echol azimo. If they don't know the time, then that testimony cannot be refuted through hazama, and therefore the rule is it's not acceptable. But bedikos edu shiyata echol azimo. But knowing what color shirt it is has nothing to do with hazama. Now, here comes the basic question that the Gemara has been trying to set up here. We just went through an analysis that according to Rav Meir, they could be off by a little less than 2 hours. And according to Rav Yehuda, they can be off a little less than 3 hours. So if that's the case, Chakiros de Ezer Shonami Edu Shiata Echol because if the second group of Eidim come and say, these two Eidim initially were with us in Disneyland at 2:00, they can say, oh, we were mistaken by an hour. See, if there's a leeway of 2 hours, then the time of day is also something that you're not going to be able to meet Mazim, and therefore the whole testimony should be thrown out. The Avina Lu Kula Tawisayu. We've set up this tolerance. For example, let's say the two witnesses come independently, and one says it was somewhere between 1 and 3, and the other one says it was between 3 and 5. Technically, you could have a differential of 5 hours. You could even move it up earlier. You're not going to be able to do it before sunrise because it's just like doing it at 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. And Rabbi Yehuda gives you a little less than 3 hours, gives you a 6-hour variation if the two Eidim come at different times and give you different hours. You could also go after 6 o'clock, except Ben Yamam Leila Lo To Inshi. Uvedinu Denesav Lakamet Feil Shabachamish Chabad B'Mizrach V'Shavachama B'Mayrav. You might even, but we know that you can always tell the difference between 5 o'clock of the fifth hour of the day and the 7th hour of the day because the sun is overhead, and so people will not make that mistake. So Tanan, Rav Meir Oimer, Oichlin Kol Chomesh. You can eat chametz the 5th hour, v'sorfin b'tchila sheish, and you burn at the beginning of the. Rav Yehuda Oimer, Oichlin Kol Arba. You eat in the 4th hour. Toilin Kol Chomesh. We suspend. You're not allowed to eat, but you don't burn yet in the 5th hour. V'sorfin b'tchila sheish. Le'abaya libid Rav Meir. Abaya, who explained Rav Meir that there was no that the ages have to be exact. So if we can be specific about time, let us eat chametz the whole 6th hour, just burn at the end. Now, and according to the pshat, that there might be difference by a little bit. At least neichelat sof shiz. Let them eat until the end of the 6th hour. And v'abaya libid Rabbi Yehuda Domer Adam Tor Chatzi Shah, at least neichelat palgashishis. Let him be able to eat the chametz until 5:30. If Rabbi Yehuda's approach is that the two Eidim can be off by an hour and a little bit, neichelat sof chamesh, you'd be able to eat your chametz until the end of the 5th hour. Amar Abaya, you can't compare testimony in court and the din of chametz. Eidus Mesur is reason. Not anybody who is anybody is just going to show up to Beis and give testimony. Somebody's going to come to Eidus, which your life is on the line. If you say something at 5, if you say that the murder happened at 5 o'clock, and other Eidim come to testify against you that you were with them, you could be put to death. So they're very careful to look at their clock. They know how to tell time. You're not going to come to court unless you know that. But chametz is an everyday thing. The eating chametz and burning chametz is on everybody. And so somebody who is not expert at time telling might make a mistake. So there we advance the hours of when you have to stop eating, unrelated to the question that existed by Edus in court. The Rav Ali ben Rab Meir Domer Adam Tor Shtei Shos Chosr Mashu, the way we learned tonight that according to Rava's understanding of Rab Meir, that the Edom could be off by a little less than 2 hours. So since we could be off regarding chametz, we shouldn't eat. How does Rab Meir allow us to eat during the whole 5th hour? You should stop already at the beginning of the 5th hour. So the Gemara says that's not a problem because chamesh chama b'mizrach, v'sheva chama b'mayriv. The 5th hour of the day, the sun is still in the east. On the 7th, it's in the west, so no one's going to make a mistake. So the Gemara says, "Yachi b'shis nami nechol." Well, at the 6th hour of the day, you should be able to eat your chametz as well. How come Rav Meir prohibited us? The middle of the sun is overhead. It's got glare, and you can't be exact. So that's why you have to stop an hour before. He said about the witnesses that they can be off by a little less than 3 hours. So how can Rabbi Yehuda allow us to eat chametz during the 4th hour? It should be within the 3-hour period up to the 7th hour, and you shouldn't be able to eat chametz at all in the beginning of the 4th hour. So the Gemara answers chamesh chama b'mizrach, v'sheva chama b'mayriv. So he's not going to make that mistake. And the kol shekain arba, which the sun is even more to the east. So if you're going to know between the 5th and 7th, so let Rabbi Yehuda allow you to eat chametz in the 5th hour. The same answer we gave before. There's no comparison between what we're trying to do regarding looking at the tolerance between Eidim and chametz. Eidus Mr. Lizrizim. To be an Eidim Bezdin, you are certainly going to be an expert at telling time. But chametz lakol maser, and therefore we have to make more of a harchaka than really technically you need, because not everybody is so careful with time. The Rava Omer Lavinu Tamid Rabbi Yehuda. That's not the reason Rabbi Yehuda. Ella Rabbi Yehuda Tamei. Rabbi Yehuda is consistent. The Omer Ein Bir Chametz El Sreifa. He held that destroying chametz has to be through burning. You need time to gather wood to burn it. So that hour is a period of, it's not because of toes, it's to allow you to gather the wood to burn. Based on this, Ravina asked the question on Rava. Rav Yehuda, Emasai, when do we say that destroying chametz has to be with sreifa? That's shelo b'shas biura. That's not right. The shas biur is when it becomes aser, right at the end of the 6th hour. Aval b'shas biuro, at that time, even Rabbi Yehuda holds hashbas b'chol dover. So the answer about gathering wood doesn't apply. El Amar Rava, a different reason why there's a harchaka in the 5th hour. Gzeira mishum yom ha'mu'unan. You know, we can't always see the sun. I understand that everyone can tell the difference between the 5th hour of the day and the 7th hour of the day, because in the 5th hour it's to the east and in the 7th hour it's to the west, but you can't always see the sun. Sometimes it's cloudy. So therefore we had to establish the gzeira, the harchaka, because of Yom HaMu'unan. Well, says the Gemara, well then maybe we shouldn't eat in the 4th hour of the day. If we can't see the sun, we don't know what's going on. So Amrav Papa, no. Arbaz Mansuda Lakolhi. The fourth hour of the day is when everybody eats their meal. So everybody knows when the fourth hour of the day is, because that's when they eat. So no one's going to make a mistake. Now, where do we see this notion that there's a certain hour of the day where people eat their first meal? Ton Rabbana. Shari Sharim Machal Ludim. The Ludim were cannibals. And they were, they ate constantly. They already ate in the first hour of the day. Shnia Michael Listim. Highway robbers were also sort of, they ganvit all night. So they wake up early to eat. Shlishis, Michael Yorshim. People who inherit great wealth. They don't work hard for their money, and therefore they can wake up early and eat. They don't have to go to work. Revius, Michael Poyalim. The fourth, the workers already have been to work, and then they take a little break and eat in the fourth hour. And the Chamishis, Michael Tamir Chachamim. Tamir Chachamim are learning until the fifth hour. Shish is Michael Koloda. And it's the sixth hour is when everybody eats their first meal. Amar Rav Papa reviews Mansur Lakoli. But how could you say the sixth hour? Rav Papa told us the fourth hour. Ela Epech. So you have to switch the Baraisa. Revius is Michael Koloda. That's when most people ate the first meal, fourth hour of the day. Chamishis, Michael Poalim. The workers had to work longer before they ate. Shishis, Michael Tamir Chachamim. The Tamir Chachamim postponed their Gashmius and learn until the sixth hour of the day.
Bernie, who are these other people? I mean, they're not the Talmidei Chachamim, they're not the Poalim, right, they're not the Ashirim, and they're not the Listim. Who's left?
Well, a lot of everybody else, 90% of the people. I mean,
most people are workers. I mean, most people should either be Talmidei Chachamim, they're scholars, or they're workers. Who's left?
No, business owners. People
Isn't that
Poyalim
would be under
Poyalim are day laborers and hour labor, people who were hired to do physical labor by the hour. So if you were a farmer or you were a builder, so like when you go pick up the Hispanic laborers from Sinclair's Paints, and that's what Poyalim are. So a Tager is a merchant or a farmer. When you ask who are the other people, the other people are 90% of the people. Talmidei Chachamim were very few. Poyalim was a certain class of employed workers. Listim are robbers. So Yorshim are very few. So the average person, that's what we mean by Michael Koloda. Now, after the sixth hour of the day, if you eat more after that, it's no nourishment, is how the Rishonim explain what this means. Like if you have a jug of wine and you throw a stone into the jug of wine, well, the volume goes up, but you haven't added any wine. So that in essence is what the Gemara means, that if you eat beyond the 12th hour, the 6th hour, then you don't really get much nourishment from that. Now, when do we say that there's no nourishment after the 6th hour? That's somebody who didn't eat breakfast. If you ate something quickly in the morning, then if you eat after the 6th hour, it will be effective, less than both. Ravashi, Ki machlokes be'edus kach machlokes bechometz. So just like they had a machlokes between Rabbi and Rabbi Yehuda by edus regarding how much people will make will err regarding timekeeping, they have the same machlokes regarding chometz. It's not like we said they tried to give terutzim. It has to do with the same machlokes by edus. So the Gemara says, "What pshita? Well, you woke up. Of course, that's what the Gemara is trying. I know hach tamrinon. Kamash malon. No, because shinui the shanina and shinui. Maybe you'll tell me that the approaches that we took, which didn't involve the mistakes that people make regarding time. Those are all differentials between the two. The lotema tanoi, you don't have to say that it's machlokes tanoi. They're real tirutzim. When do we say that we can accept difference in edus if there's 2 hours or 3 hours? That's time. One of the witnesses say the murder happened before sunrise, and the other one says it happened after sunrise. Then clearly, even if they're only 5 minutes off, a dusan betela. So the Gemara says pshita. Of course, we've been saying this all along. Everyone knows the difference between day and night, and between, let's say, the 5th hour of the day and the 7th hour of the day. Ella. No, the case was one of the witnesses said it was before the sunrise, and the other witness says no, it was during sunrise. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Hanami pshita. It's also a davar pashut. Gemara says, no, not so fast. Maybe they both saw the same act. It was that v'hadika Omar Tochanetz, the fact that he said it was within the sunrise period, Bigiluya Havakoi, he was sort of sitting in a glow, and he thought it was during the nates, but it was really before. Kamash Malon that no, we reject the edus. If one said it was before and one said it was during, it's also considered a differential, which is significant, and we would reject the edus. Okay, very good.